So what we really want to do is to be able to complement the inspirational words that a lot of our speakers kind of bring to the table with a little dose of reality of what are people really talking about, what are the challenges within organizations and for leaders. And so we've got a wonderful panel to talk about this, and we'll save the last 10 minutes or so for some questions from the audience. I'll start on this side this time so you guys don't feel slighted. First of all, please welcome the Chief Human Resources Officer from PwC Canada, Penny Partridge. Penny, come on out. Hello, Penny. You got a woo
That's
from
my
the
team.
back.
That's
your
my
team?
Yeah, I guarantee it.
Your team is one person?
That was
No.
that was a lot of people.
Who's here from PwC? Let's hear a shout out.
Guys, there they are.
Oh, there's like 40 of you. You're just really, you work so well together as a team. It's like you have one voice. Now, if somebody doesn't know PwC, they probably don't belong to be here, but maybe you could give us a little bit of background on PwC.
So PwC is what we've branded ourselves PwC, but otherwise known as PricewaterhouseCoopers, largest professional services firm in the world, about 6,000 people in Canada.
Wow. Partnership.
Provides consulting, audit, tax, all of those types of services. Obviously, people business. We don't produce anything else, and we have by next year, about 80% of our people in Canada will be millennial generation. So
80%?
80%, so very much a young business. Average age is 28.
Wow. So get your PwC branded Beats headphones.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, up next, we have the Vice President of Talent and Leadership Development from Knightsbridge, Bryan Benjamin. Now there's all this pressure to woo for each person who comes out. Bryan, we heard a little bit from Vince earlier about what Knightsbridge does. Can you just give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. Bryan Benjamin, now that I've sat in the chair effectively and have my water with me, I lead the leadership and talent business at Knightsbridge. So across North America, we've got consultants working in areas such as succession management, leadership coaching, team effectiveness, anything to do with building more effective talent within organizations to help businesses effectively execute their strategy.
Awesome, great. And finally, we have the president of ADP Canada. Please welcome Greg Secord. Greg, it sounded like, well, the other two got woos. You got like a two-fingered whistle from somebody. You brought truckers with you today, I guess. Hello, Oshawa. Nice to have you with us. I went to high school in Oshawa. I can make that joke, all right? It's probably the pretentious people from Whitby who were guffawing. Nobody gets offended anymore. They only get offended on behalf of other people. Greg, I think a lot of people here are going to know ADP as the payroll people, but certainly there's a heck of a lot more to your organization than that.
Absolutely. We're going through a transformation right now. We're the largest HCM, or human capital management company in the world, with 2,000 or so folks here in Canada, and we're going through a lot of change. So I'm interested in the panel myself today.
That's right. I'm not just a participant. I'm an audience member. Well, I want to start with a question that I'm quite frankly sick of hearing, which may contradict me wanting to ask it. But, are we sick of hearing this? What makes a good leader? Penny, are we sick of hearing that question, or is there a stock answer?
Yeah, it's funny because I think when we were prepping for this, I said, don't ask me what makes a good leader because everybody says the same things. I think everybody has their own little slant on what that is. And I think it's, when I was sitting back even thinking about it, and I think I'm constantly trying to figure out who I want to be as a leader. I don't think you're ever really done trying to better yourself. And then you try to look around, and I never have one role model. So it's all about what do I see in different leaders that is something I can try to emulate or do better myself. Yep. So for me, it is about self-awareness. It is about knowing things like, which I'm doing right now, I talk too much, and I've got to learn to listen better and trying to do that every day. And then understanding my team and what motivates them to help them be the best they can be and not be the leader that sits up top and doesn't get her hands into the actual execution and what's going on the ground. Yep. So all of those kinds of things, but
Yeah.
that's my slant.
Yeah, because I mean, whenever you ask that question, people are like, "It's Sir Winston Churchill, it's Martin Luther King." Like, really? That's a lot to live up to. Bryan, are we making unrealistic? Are we putting unrealistic expectations on these unbelievable generational leaders that we're asking people to aspire to be like?
Yeah, I think,
You-
I've personally never led anybody to war, right? So, I think the expectations are, to some extent, a little bit unrealistic and possibly even, sensationalized in terms of looking at it, pretty broadly. So I think, Penny made some great comments in terms of, keeping it practical. What does it actually mean for me as an individual? What does it mean for my organization? And recognizing that it's something that evolves and changes over time. So I don't just sort of figure it out once, and if I have humility or if I'm able to inspire, I've made it, and that's it for the next 35 years of my career. It's what makes sense for me at this point in my organization, and helping people understand that, you can make mistakes. You can not be perfect from the beginning, and if you're open to that, others will actually help define, what it means to be a leader for you. So it's one thing for me to call myself a leader. I'd much rather think what other people think of me as a leader.
Right, right. Greg, when we look at leaders within an organization, what are you looking for? I mean, we can say what makes a great leader, but or when they're young and they're developing, what kind of traits do you think people have that you identify them as someone to watch within the organization?
Yeah, probably the two things that I would look for the most are communication skills. So are they able to articulate a plan well? Are they able to explain a goal in a way that can get other people to follow them? And then the second one would be empathy. Because I think to be a good leader and to get people to follow, so to speak, would be to understand what it is that motivates them. And part of the contract of being a good leader is to be able to satisfy that need on behalf of other people. That's how it's successful, that everybody wins. So if they can communicate very, very well, and if they can display empathy, I think you're seeing some early signs.
Yeah, and Penny, you mentioned you're going to have 80% of a millennial workforce. Are you seeing things within that cohort that is really changing the way you develop leaders, the way you train leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that generation cares a lot about growth and development. Not saying that the rest of us didn't, but they look at, we were saying with us, it's no longer about dangling that carrot to be a partner or be the most senior person. That doesn't do it for them anymore. They may get there, but they would get there by how we foster their growth and development. So every couple years, making sure they have that shorter term vision to get there. So when it comes to sort of how we develop them, it's a lot more through experiential learning. So a lot more through putting them through simulations or having them actually practice real things out on their environment and their jobs, and letting them make mistakes, and having back to that culture around that's okay, because success is just one step past failure. And that's hard in any culture where you're trying to do a really great job. But I think that's really, they're helping us kind of change the way we look at what it means to be a leader and what it means to grow.
Yeah. And Bryan, are you seeing that with your clients, that they're facing similar challenges with the millennial, that they just want to go play ultimate frisbee?
Yeah, I spoke on a panel recently, and it was out to a group
It was not
of
as good as this one. Not as good
millennials.
as this one.
And-
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges is, much like you said in your opening comments around, sort of living up to a leader like a Winston Churchill, is we go a little too far with our, the millennials only going to work between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. and then they'll sleep, and maybe they'll do some work after midnight. So again, organizations are thinking, more broadly. So how do I engage a very diverse workforce? So I've got younger people, I've got older people, I've got part-time, I've got different nationalities, I've got different, expectations in terms of where I want to take my career. So it's helping them understand, again, what does it mean for them as an organization, and biting off something realistic that they can start with and move from there. But pushing them beyond the stereotype is the absolute first thing that we need to accomplish with them.
As I just did earlier. Yeah.
You did a great job.
I'm not the first
The
person.
one thing we were told about millennials is they don't like to be called millennials.
Oh, really?
It's a stereotype, right? Yeah,
Right, right.
absolutely. I know I do
They
too.
would prefer digital natives?
That's the next generation.
That's the
They
next-
prefer
okay.
younger people, apparently.
Younger people. Younger
Ask
people.
them.
Do we have any younger people in the audience? Sir, you're easily in your 40s. And that's a compliment, I think. Because I'm in my 40s. You're immature. Right, okay, good. Now, but taking, coming to something like this, where we've got incredibly inspirational messages, all three of the speakers this morning, but how do you go from, whether it's for yourself or to help train new leaders, how do you take it from, hey, it's good to fail, which is I think really important, but how do you make that really practical so somebody does something different on a daily basis? Greg, let's start with you as yourself. How are you applying the inspirational stuff to what you do on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I think that you essentially have a goal for a time period. Could be a day, could be a week. I think that you hold yourself accountable to the goals that you have for the organization and for yourself, so you live it a little bit. I think that you have to be realistic. So you're not always going to hit it out of the park. And in fact, most of the things that are the most important things to do in the organization take way longer to do successfully than you ever planned for them to take. And that is in contrast to the whole concept of fail. If you're going to fail, fail fast.
Right.
Because the number of course corrections that you realistically have to make, if you go through, for example, a culture transformation in your organization, it's hard work. And it never happens as fast as you think it's going to happen. And essentially, part of the reason is because it's not done from the top. It's done from other places in the organization, and to get to that point takes time. So I think that one of the ways you can do it is understand not so much when you hit the point of failure, but when you hit the point for necessity for course correction and acceleration.
Right. Right.
Can I add
Yeah, of
to
course,
that?
yeah.
No, because I think that's so important to know. It's like, I'm very much a person that wants everything to happen tomorrow. And it's understanding that, for example, even little things where we were trying to figure out how to get our people to think differently about how to work, so to work flexibly, and what does that mean, and maybe work from home a day a month or a day a week or whatever. And you're dealing with different generations there and trying to explain sort of why that matters to us at a business and how that can actually, making the business case, make that better for us to deliver better work to our clients. But then it's trying to think about how you can take those things and maybe put them into a routine. So for us, little things where, everybody gets together before we start on a new client and, we have a team meeting to talk about it. It's putting one of sort of the steps in there to talk about everybody's needs around work-life flexibility. So it's actually a required step in that agenda. So in some ways, sometimes you have to force that conversation from the bottom up and then also work around, the dialogue that all your leaders and management teams actually have with their people and actually practice those dialogues for those difficult conversations, because sometimes they're not that easy and they're not innate. So it's trying to figure out how you can operationalize some of those sort of grandiose, inspirational topics.
Yeah, okay. I want to come back to the wellness thing, because I think that's a challenge. But Bryan, what are the challenges that leaders are facing today that maybe their predecessors didn't?
Yeah, it's one of them that sort of keeps coming up time and time again is just the sheer volume of everything, right? So we talk about the pace of change, we talk about the need to do this before you do that, and oh, wait a minute, we changed our priorities, and how do you pivot and actually make some kind of traction? So I think there's something around that volume piece. I've had a conversation with a client recently, and they were in that situation saying, what we're asking of our leaders, especially our new leaders that we're trying to accelerate their development within an organization, we're actually asking the impossible of them. And we went with that. We said, well, tell us a little bit more about what this impossible was. And it was interesting to see the shoulders of individuals in the room actually start to go down. And people were joking about it. Oh, yeah, it is an impossible task. It's not going to be something that we're going to get right tomorrow. And so we need to help our leaders get better at doing what we are asking is an impossible task, calling it out as an impossible task, and making them feel that they're still successful when they're not able to achieve everything that they're setting out to achieve.
Sorry, I'll come to you in a sec, Greg. Is it the volume that's impossible of just getting through it, or is it that we're asking them to have different skill sets that we didn't want them to have in the beginning?
Yeah, I think it's everything. I say volume as a placeholder for there's just a lot, right? The pace, it's the skill set, it's, can you manage 10 direct reports when you didn't have any direct reports yesterday? So something new earlier within their career. And so if we say it's the volume, we've often talked about it as how do we help them prioritize? So someone will say, classic line, I'm too busy, I don't have time. Well, no, you've actually deliberately made a decision not to do something. So let's talk about why are you not doing that, and in place of what are you not doing versus what you're doing more of. So helping them again deal with that volume, make good decisions, make them quickly, and be comfortable recognizing they won't be perfect because they're being asked to do the impossible.
Right.
And I think it is to a certain degree the cadence as well. So you mentioned pace, but if you sit in meetings, what you hear all the time is, there's just so much change coming at us. There's so much change. And so it feels a little overwhelming. But the truth is, it's kind of like the way it is. So things are changing fast. It isn't just what's going on in your business or what's going on in your client's business. Sometimes it's the organization structure. We're a hierarchy, now we're a matrix. Deal with it. 2 to hire, 1 to fire, whatever that means. But, all this kind of stuff is coming fast at everybody in terms of what is required to run the business. And I think people feel a little overwhelmed. So that may be the reality. Then the challenge that the leader faces is how do you help people get through it and prioritize and set goals that are achievable, and inside of all that, allow everybody to go home at the end of the day or the end of the week feeling good about what's been done.
Yeah.
Can I add to that too? Because I think it's, you're talking about the cadence of change. It's, one of those things about being a great leader, right, is bringing those people along with you. And I think that is always a struggle. And as things are changing, you always know those people that you see them, right, that have great change agility, that adapt really fast and love it and eat it up. And others that are good but just are really, really struggling. And that is a challenge, I think, for all of us. And figuring out maybe when you're making those talent decisions, who's never going to get there, and making those tough calls, right? And then trying to bring the rest of the momentum along with you.
But haven't we been having this discussion for like the past decade? Like change is, like, whoa, and everyone's, I don't know, is it just, maybe I'm just bitter as hell. I'm just sick of hearing about it. But seriously, haven't we been talking about, wow, things are changing really quickly for the past 10 years?
You know what, I think some of it is now, for us, it's really at the forefront. I don't know if people have just woken up and started to listen that, wait a second, maybe we haven't been successful because we're actually not really thinking about the impact, this has on people, right? And so we were just kind of bulldozing it before, but we're not getting anywhere. And I also do think with this other younger generation coming through, quite frankly, we do see some more change agility in them. They want different things constantly, so I also feel they're pushing that. So you're seeing it. I'm actually seeing things actually change this time as opposed to just talking about it for 10 years.
Right.
One of the pieces, and you're right, change has been talked about, day in and day out for a decade plus. What I do hear and what we do see practically that's shifting is change used to be talked about as a project. So we're going to change and we're going to focus on that for 3 months, and then, we got another project. So we're going to change again for the next 6 months now.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is organizations are recognizing that we're always going to be changing. So if we're sitting here in 10 years, we'll probably be talking about change. It's how are we adapting to it? How are we getting really good at it? How are we recognizing people that are struggling and pulling them along, the ones that aren't going to get it? How do we bring some stability to that situation? So it's, forget about thinking about it as a project. Yeah, you're going to do an implementation, and that might be part of it. you're always going to be changing.
Yeah.
And we got to get on with it. And once we've done that, I think we can set ourselves up to be better leaders within organizations and better agents of change for those going through that process.
Yeah, yeah. Now we've got Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who's going to be coming out. What's funny, Mayor Giuliani spoke in Calgary, and I couldn't be there. And my good friend Bruce Sellery, who some of you may know, hosted that. And so the day before introducing Giuliani, he called Naheed Nenshi, who's the mayor of Calgary, and said, as the mayor of Calgary, how should I introduce Rudy Giuliani? And Naheed Nenshi said, well, you'd introduce him as the second best mayor in the world. Well, that was great. But he's certainly going to talk about, responding to crisis and how leaders kind of step up to the plate in that. And clearly, I mean, he's a guy who that is a crisis that hopefully none of us ever have to experience or lead during a time like that. Are we manufacturing crises to make us seem more important as a leader? Are we just exaggerating things that really aren't that critical? Are we really faced with crises every single day?
Yeah, I would say people, well, you can't speak for every leader, but people aren't necessarily doing it to change who they are as a leader. I think one of the things that we continue to see organizations and people within organizations struggle with is, what is important and requires some urgency. So we want to light that proverbial fire under people's, desks so that they can start to move. Let's make sure that we're placing the right emphasis on the right issues at the right time. And, that comes back to the mission impossible task is we've got to make decisions really quickly. And as leaders, sometimes we make something more than it needs to be, where we actually underemphasize something that requires a little bit more attention. So if you drive adrenaline every single time, when you really need to drive it, you're not going to get the kind of reaction that you're looking to get.
Yeah, and I think we've all been on lots of teams in our life, and we think back to the highest performing teams that we were on. They were not crisis-driven teams. If you look back, there wasn't much crisis because it was avoided. It was managed as a regular process. So crisis absolutely creates an opportunity for judgment or grading, good or bad. But I think it's something that everybody would like to avoid.
Yeah, I think it's how you define crisis, right? Like, I mean, it's back to, I think what Bryan was saying too, is around prioritization and keeping that adrenaline going. But we sort of have a saying, like where I am, it's, we're not delivering babies. No one's going to die if that doesn't, right? It's trying to have everybody keep it in perspective and then call on that energy when you actually need it. And I do think that's the job of the leader. Yeah,
I'm really lucky in that my wife works for St. Mike's Hospital in early intervention
People might
psychosis.
Actually die if she doesn't.
Yeah, early intervention psychosis, and I'll come home and go like, the client didn't buy the campaign. I'm really stressed out. And she'd be like, really? That's really difficult. I'm sorry you're going through that right now. So let's have that check in there. Now, Ariana raised a lot, because a lot of this, kind of manufacturing and hyperventilating over things has a serious impact on our health and our judgments. And I don't know if she said this line here today, because I can't hear well from backstage, but the line that I loved of hers was that, you never be evaluated on your stamina. And so I work till 4 a.m, nobody cares. But how are you as leaders, just not with your organization, but how are you balancing this lifestyle wellness approach that you can get up fresh every day and make good, sound decisions? How are you making that work?
I don't think anyone's got that figured out, right? I think we'll be talking about that 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I think often for myself, I'm my own worst enemy. I'm a bit of a workaholic, which my team I know can attest to. I have to make sure I don't transfer that to others. And I think it's about scheduling my own private time. So I swim and I do have a whole bunch of other interests, and scheduling that right into my day and treating it as important as that work meeting is. And that's hard, and that's taken me years to do. I finally feel this year that I am starting to do that and not letting other things get in the way and trump that, because it's too important. When I don't have that balance there, I'm not at my best. You know,
Right.
back to what she was saying, like if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not doing these things, I'm not making the best decisions. It's not good for me, my family, or the organization. So, you know, some of it is just knowing yourself and actually putting yourself first, right?
Yeah. Pay yourself first, as David Chilton would say. Brian, how do you do it?
Yeah, I think.
So I'm assuming you guys do it. You're like, nah, I actually just ignore it completely.
Yeah, if I figure it out, I'm going to write a book and be upstage, speaking next year at this. One of the pieces is to be honest with yourself that you don't have it figured out, and recognizing that there are going to be periods where you are pushing the envelope a little bit too far, and you're going to need other ones where you do pull it back. One of the pieces that I recognize and I struggle with, and I know I'm going to always struggle with it, is thinking I am productive when I'm not actually productive. And so, you know, a Saturday morning pulling out a laptop while I'm sitting on the couch and my 7-year-old is next to me, you know, asking me some questions and sort of half listening to him and doing some emails, and recognizing that if I shut the laptop, listen to him, had that time, I could probably be much more effective in the work that I'm doing separately and treating it separately. But it's a trick that you got to continue to play with yourself, because you feel like, oh, I'm not getting to that right now, I'm not being productive. Well, actually, if I can give all of my attention to that for a period of time, maybe later, I'll actually get further ahead faster than thinking I'm juggling lots of balls, because I'm not, and I'm only fooling myself. Everybody else, including my 7-year-old, recognizes that.
Yeah. What's Excel? Yeah.
And I think the other thing that leaders have to remember is their impact on other people as well in terms of modeling it, and it'll help you with your own. So if you get an email at 9 o'clock from the president, what does it do to you? Right? So your obligation as a leader, and it doesn't really matter at what level in the organization is, don't do it to them. Don't ruin their night. And don't have them spinning about it until the morning. You're not being productive. There's nothing productive that they can do about the email, and it forces you then to think about what it is you're doing. So that's one example. I think if you really focus on what is the expectation from this activity and what message am I sending, you reinforce what it is that you're looking for in the workplace.
Yeah, I found if you want to freak somebody out at nighttime, around 8 o'clock, just send an email that says, can we grab some time to chat in the morning? Right? And yeah, you know, you're thinking you just want to check in on something, and they think the whole night they're getting fired. Don't do that, please. Don't do that. Now, so that's great for you individually, but as organizations, I think, don't we just paying lip service to wellness? Like, I mean, to go like, hey, you should really know, we want you to balance your life, and but at the same time, you know, we've all got guns to our head with 15 points year-over-year growth, right? And how do we, are we paying just lip service?
I like to say, no, I don't think so. I think at the core we're not, but I think when we get into those moments where we want something and we need something, we want it now, right? So I still feel the same way when I get an email or anything from the CEO. It's like, it's always that night where I'm not checking, where something came up and I was like, oh. So I think part of our job is to try to shift that culture, because the more we continue to just respond, it just reinforces it constantly. So I don't think we're playing lip service to it. I just think changing that culture is really hard. And we're back to, every single person can take accountability for that and do something about that with your own teams, because everyone here has an impact on someone.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's difficult, right? It takes a long time.
But Brian, for your clients, are you seeing most of them are just, it's in their value statement, but they don't actually do anything with it?
Yeah, I'm finding most of our clients, and many are in the audience, so I'm going to do justice to them.
Who are wonderful people, I might add.
Really want to solve the issue, right? So it's not lip service to the issue. They recognize it's a huge issue, right? You're getting regrettable turnover, lost productivity, frustration, client issues if it's impacting, beyond the organization. no one's figured out a great formula that's going to sustain them, that will actually overcome it, because it's individual. So I might need to work 15 hours a day for a couple weeks because I'm on a critical part of a project. Recognizing is there someone that can counterbalance me at that given time. So I find that the clients that have had the most traction are the ones that don't just do sort of, work-life balance lunches where, nobody comes because they can't schedule it and they're too busy. They actually get really practical and talk about the fact that this part is going to be busy for this period of time. This part might have a little bit more slack. So how do we reshift and think about roles a little bit differently? So rolling up their sleeves, getting really practical, calling it what it is when it is going to be a hectic period of time, not pretending, okay, you can shut your laptop down at 5, because that's going to create more anxiety. So the ones who are doing it are the ones that, the lunches help, but that can't be the full solution. That's the lip service in my mind.
Yeah. And Greg, is it really the responsibility of the people on the team to kind of take, hold of their own priorities and to really push for that kind of change within an organization?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I think that the only way that you're going to be successful is if people take responsibility for their own priorities and effectively communicate them. So just like you were talking earlier about having a project meeting where everybody goes through basically what their personal requirements are as well as the business requirements, getting the expectations on the table and having the dialogue around it is very, very important. I think most companies are incredibly serious about wellness now because they understand the consequences. Some of us sit on, essentially the benefits committees, the pension committees, and we're trying to think, how do we put this into practice in the workforce? Are we putting money at various ways to get exercise? Are we actually making policies around requiring vacation?
Right.
I think you're seeing more and more of that. So it used to be like, a bit of pride around it. I haven't had vacation in 3.5 years.
Right.
Well, I think now companies are saying, hey, you know what? We believe that you're going to be much more productive if you do take that that vacation. So I think it does require that type of communication.
I think it may have been Branson, I'm not sure, who pushed for unlimited vacation, like when you can take it and go. And I want to switch things up a little bit here, because we spent a fair bit this morning talking about innovation. Bryan, what does innovation mean to you as a leader?
Yeah, it's another one of those ones that you can ask and get 1,500 different answers. So one of the things I actually grabbed onto this morning was innovation for purpose sake. So where you're actually doing it not to innovate some big grandiose idea. So I actually have a very simplistic view of innovation, and sometimes it is the next greatest idea that could change the world. More often than not, it's going to be something more incremental, and so helping people understand how they can affect innovation and actually define what it means for them within their role. So can I do something that's going to actually make me more effective in my role? In the grand scheme of things, it might not add tons to the bottom line of my organization, but if I'm more engaged and more productive, it very well might have a broader type of ripple effect. So I don't have a 10-word perfect dictionary definition of it, but what I do challenge myself and others around me is to take a very pragmatic, simple, from wherever you're sitting type of approach to innovation and a real purpose sort of spin to it. Why am I doing it? And sometimes not innovating is actually even more effective than trying to be the one who is always driving something new forward.
Right.
It's okay to stick with something if it's actually working.
Right. Now, and Greg, you said you're going through a huge transformation as an organization. What is your role? What do you see your role as being part of that, as leading that innovative charge?
So certainly communication. So you have to paint a vision of where it is that you're trying to get to and the things that you're looking for. But probably most importantly for me and the folks that report to me is finding different ways to reinforce what it is that we're looking for. So you're out talking about it in town halls. then you're doing it in round tables and skip levels, and it is just repeating and repeating and repeating, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people's posture around. As soon as they hear it, this is the way they think, and then sooner or later they don't have to hear it anymore, and this is the move they have, and you're trying to imprint that into the organization. And it doesn't matter whether it's the cultural piece that we're going through, or if it's trying to find a mechanism to welcome and reward and create innovation in the organization, which I think just about probably everybody's company has today, is some way to sponsor, encourage, reward innovation in the organization. But it's really all about orientation, and how do you get folks to go there right away. And that is communication, and it's also just in the way you reward. So and it's all the simple things. Everybody thinks it's tough. It's not that tough if you check all the boxes with the simple things. There's not, for example, a promotional announcement that goes out in our organization that does not include how that person is displayed, a couple of our very, very important values, right? What they've done relative to innovation in the work group. So that's a requirement for the leader to put it in there, so that we can crystallize for everybody in the organization, and they can say, yes, that's why not only that person merits that promotion, but that's what the organization is looking for.
Yeah. Penny, how do you balance that? Because I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations will have, innovation teams or, centers of excellence, and they've, kind of tapped these people as the people who are going to lead the charge. And how do you balance that with the people who are just getting stuff done?
Well, it's interesting. I was listening to that because I almost think we've created, innovation to be like the next crisis, right? It's like the big thing that nobody can actually ever solve. Yeah. We have the same thing. We have innovation challenges, an innovation leader. And I think it's so we don't forget about it. But I do think, this is about what everybody does every single day. And I think to Greg's point, it's you can't innovate if you don't have a vision. And at the end of the day, it's a business. If it's not going to have an impact either on growth or the bottom line some way or the other, then I'm not really sure what you're doing. And I think what we start to find is that we've got current things that we call innovation or transformation, the other big word that we should have done 20 years ago, right? Like aligning, vision to strategy, putting things in place to do that. Is that innovation? Is it non-innovation? I don't think it really matters. I think the point is that you're trying to celebrate the successes of people trying to do things differently to get to a better end result. So I think it got to be a sort of a core capability in people you're hiring, much like change agility is now, right? It's how do you think differently?
Yeah.
One of the, just quickly on that, one of the pieces that I'm finding so many of our clients struggling with is driving for innovation, because they clearly need to do it in order to stay relevant and figure out where they're going to be 10, 15 years. So the vision could not agree more with. The communication could not agree more with. And it's making those direct links between where are we going, those that are involved in shaping the vision and driving and executing, and those that are cranking stuff out, because we're not shutting the business down for the next 2 years, figuring out where we're going to go and then launching again. We got to keep things going. And so my role might be to crank stuff out, but it'd be so key for me to understand how my doing that actually links up to the vision and could help our organization be relevant 20 years from now.
Right.
I also think it's with the people that are cranking the stuff out, some of their role too is continuous improvement, right? So it's like they've got to understand that it's not good enough anymore just to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Part of that, they are impacting innovation and the future every day, more so than some of the other big things we're doing.
Well, and that's where it's, innovation from wherever you are, back to the question you asked to start this line of thinking, which was, what's the definition of innovation? It could be huge vision, 15, 20, 25 years, or it could be, I've been doing this job for the last 15 years. I bet you I've learned a thing or two, hopefully, and how can I enhance what I'm actually doing? So we got to make sure that we're doing it right at all of those levels.
Yeah. I believe it was last year we had Jack Welch on this stage, and it was very funny because throughout the day we were involved with something for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Canada, and we were asking all the speakers to give a big shout out to their mentor. And then Jack Welch came on stage, and I said, Jack, who is your mentor? And he goes, nobody. I hate mentors. And then he kind of said, well, everybody's a mentor, really, is how he spun it. But how do people in your position, you're very senior, that you're expected to mentor all these people, but who the hell do you go to? I mean, who keeps you in balance, and who do you go to for advice?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think my mindset has shifted a little bit on that. So, I'm fortunate enough that I actually have a proper external coach that my organization does give to me. So there's one, but lately it's been either someone on my team or one of the more junior staff, because it depends on what you're getting mentoring on, right? Is it career? Is it the fact that I need to be figuring out how to use Twitter better or social media? Because in that case, I need to kind of pick the skill set that I'm missing.
Right.
So I'm the same. Like, I don't really have one person I'd say that's the be-all, end-all mentor to me. I have different people I will go to at all different stages of my career and all different stages of what I'm looking for. So.
Sure. Yeah. Bryan, who do you vent to?
Outside of work. It depends, and actually, I want to be very careful about that. So sometimes it could be someone on my team if it's about a specific issue that's external and we're working to achieve it. Other times, you might want to do that venting, but that's completely inappropriate because we need to keep people focused and engaged on the right pieces. I think for me, the important part is when I need to vent. It's not usually to ramble off a complaint on something. It's usually I'm struggling with something and I need someone to help me think it through. So it might start with a couple of, beep, 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 I need to get that out. But it's finding the right person who can help me and challenge me, so put me back in my place when I need to be put back in my place, will not be afraid to ask good questions. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between sort of coaching and mentoring. Mentoring, you've got some latitude to sort of say, get over yourself. I've been down this road before. Here's some things that work for me. How might it apply in your situation? And so much like Penny, it depends on the situation. I'll go to different people. I've gotten better at actually seeking that out earlier. In the past, you sort of try to wrestle it yourself, thinking that if you don't figure it out, you're not being the leader. I actually find the ones who are the leader are the ones that put it out, articulate it better, quicker, and figure out who to go to. So most often someone within the organization, because it's organization specific and they can get the nuances. If it's about the broader business, I look for someone outside and sometimes someone from a completely different industry to give me a very different way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And mentoring itself can be its own form of mentorship. Because if you're mentoring folks in the organization, and you're doing it properly, you're being thoughtful about what it is, the conversation that you're going to have with them that day, they've sent you the information, and guess what? A lot of the stuff you're not doing yourself, right? You have to go back, and it's a good reminder. I think that the external, getting a program with an external mentor, somebody who was a CEO or a leader before, is absolutely great. I also have somebody in the organization who I worked for who is probably about is exact opposite from me in terms of strengths. She leads a totally different way than I lead, and it's great to get the other perspective, to get the blind spot. So if you can know yourself well enough to know what you're not good at, and you can find somebody who's really good at that can be extraordinarily helpful as well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm going to come out. We've got about 8 minutes left here. I want to make sure that we come out to see some of you. Hold a hammy right there. Yep. I'll start over here. If you have a question for one of our panelists, just put your hand up. Anyone? I'll cut across here. While I'm roaming, we talked a lot about the chaos and the stress and the change and everything. Penny, what are you most excited about as a leader right now, to be leading at this point in time?
See, I'm one of those leaders that actually really do like change. So I'm excited about, speaking personally, things that we're doing truly around that millennial generation and getting them to work well with others. And whether that is about career development and the focus we really have now on leadership development. And in an organization, like ours, we've been pretty heavily focused around technical skills. So now it really is around helping people to know themselves better, have more diversity of thought, understand how to engage different cultures, all of that kind of stuff, to me is really showing to my profession, sort of, which I know Bryan can relate to, HR is that strategic partner in trying to help those people have and develop and learn those skills. So that's, what excites me right now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sylvia. My question for you is, with so much training and development and resources out there on leadership, and all the great, like conferences like this, great leadership, what today still surprises you about your leaders?
We were trying to hear. You said, so what, with all the stuff out there in the courses on leadership, what surprises us still today that maybe they're still not doing? That was the question. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, good ending, because a surprise, I could take it in any different direction, good or bad. I think the part that still gets me is the amount of leaders and organizations, for that matter, that are trying to solve the same problems in isolation. And so, working in professional services, I have the pleasure of working across, multiple geographies, multiple business lines, different industries, and yet many of the problems are the same. And so, yes, at the end of the day, many organizations are competing for market share and growth, so we're not going to sort of open our arms and share our challenges. But I do think there's a macro opportunity to start to tackle some of these things a little bit more broadly. And so when I see it within client organizations, I could be working with the VP of marketing, and then I'm also working with the VP of sales, and I probably know both of them better than they know each other, and yet they're dealing with the same challenge from maybe a different vantage point. So, how do we actually get people to be a little bit more open and putting stuff on the table? And so I've got the pleasure of being able to be pretty overt and say, I know what you're dealing with, I know what you're dealing with, but in confidence, let's actually tackle this together. And that's where you have some of the more profound breakthroughs.
And the thing I would add is providing honest feedback. So I think it still amazes me that we have folks walking around in our organization who are unaware, because we have not fulfilled our responsibility to tell them and to help them and to give them the opportunity. And in a way, we're being so unfair when we do that. So as leaders, if we're not giving honest feedback, if we're not trying to help push people in the right direction, coach them, give them the training, the development that they need, we're not really fulfilling our role. So I would say that's a big one for me.
It's so funny. I was about to say something along the same vein. I was thinking, what does surprise me? The amount of people we have in leadership roles that lack self-awareness. And I think some of it is because we've kind of done that to them, right? Because once you hit a certain point, nobody wants to give that difficult feedback to them, and nobody really wants to tell them. So they're living sort of in their own little box. But and I think a lot of the effort we're putting into around leadership is helping people understand themselves better so they can help others. So.
Frank, you smell. Something like that, right? Giving that feedback? No? Okay, so I'm over here. I'm over here.
Hi, I'm Paula Vitale, and I work at Cabinet Office in the Ontario government. And my question is, I find myself at a senior advisor level, so it's the highest level before senior management. And there's a lot of people at my level, and a lot of us have young families, and we have a pretty balanced life. But the thought of going to that next step seems overwhelming, like you talked about the impossibility of that task. So what would be your advice for those of us who are hesitating about taking that step in?
Just because I'm going to play a bit of the woman angle on that one, because I hear that a lot from women, and it's like, it makes me nervous because you're almost opting out before you've even been given the chance to do it, which I would say never opt out. I've got 2 young boys, 4 and 7, and I don't know, I guess for me, I never really had that thought that I wasn't going to make partner. I just kind of kept going, figuring that if I'm at the right place where I do have people supporting me and I can talk openly about what I need, and I have seen other women or other people that you look up to been able to handle it, I think I always have like that attitude of I can do it and I will sort it out, because you know what, if you get there and it's not working for you, at some point maybe it's not the right place, or you haven't been as open and transparent about what you need. And as long as you're delivering, I mean, I think we all in our organizations need to be a lot more open to that nowadays, but don't opt out. I say to everyone here, and especially the women.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You figure it out. I think, be honest with yourself. I know my colleague Vince, who opened this morning, would say the same thing, is you need to ask yourself those questions. So good for you for asking them. I was on a panel a couple of months ago on the topic of succession, and what I'd actually challenge you back with is many organizations are having similar conversations of, how do we get more people attracted to these senior roles? And so we've got people thinking about should I or shouldn't I, I'm not sure about the scope or what have you. And, we've got other people behind doors saying, how do we make this more attractive? And so to build on, Greg's earlier comment around the feedback is, can we have those open and transparent conversations? So, don't opt out, but at least have that conversation. Let it be known that you're interested. It's amazing how many people go through without actually self-proclaiming. So Sandra Boyd would agree. She talked to us at lunch, at the VIP lunch around that, is put it out there. But do go ahead and be vocal. And if it's not right, don't think about it as that position or that level's never right. It might just not be right within that organization, and then that's a different conversation to move forward. But please be vocal about it, because for every person considering should I or shouldn't I, there's a person thinking how do we get more people to become interested, and we got to jointly solve that challenge.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you. Karu Matsui from Montreal. How do you find the balance between experience and innovation? And what I mean by that is a split organization with individuals that have been there for many, many years, over 15 years, and a new generation coming in that's 2 or 3 years that need to be harnessed a little bit. Those that have been there for a long time need motivation and have a tendency to be demotivated. How do you deal with that?
I think a big part of it is validating the experience. So at the end of the day, innovation is simply solving a problem in a better way. And I remember early in a stint that I had as a marketing leader in our organization, I thought, well, I'm going to have to come up with all these wild ideas and be the innovator. And really what I found was that most of the good ideas existed in the organization. And the job really was to extract them from the organization and find a way to communicate them and put them together in a way that made sense. And I think that if you have a group of tenured associates who really know your organization and you're augmenting them with some of the new, it's getting the dialogue so there's recognition that understand the problems, probably have some great ideas on what could be done to fix them and some new ways to help it get done. So I would put the peanut butter in the chocolate and go for it is what I would do.
And that's innovation.
You need someone who's not afraid to call BS when they need to. So one of the things that I see as the greatest challenge, and I've worked with lots of groups and lots of organizations where you've got, young mixed with older, new with old, mergers, all that kind of stuff. And the biggest stumbling block is people are too focused on either jockeying for position or trying to get their point of view across, where no one is actually remembering, what are we trying to drive towards here? So back towards that vision. And so, any time where you're sub-optimizing the new person just because they're new, or you're not giving credence to the history because somebody has been down that path before and learned something, we're missing a huge opportunity. And so, how do you quickly get all that's great between the diversity, but anchor it towards where you're actually going? And every time you lose sight of where you're going, and it's more about sort of where have we come from, and my idea is better than your idea because of this or that, we're actually taking a big step back, and it's going to be difficult to regain that ground. So you got to get those ground rules out right away. You got to have that person that calls BS when you're not driving towards that vision, and you got to recognize as a group that you're going to go through those growing pains. So sometimes a big part of it is just calling it out, saying we're going to have some pretty difficult conversations here. Let's get comfortable being uncomfortable with those conversations versus just feeling awkward in the moment and starting to spin.
Awesome. thank to all three of you for your honesty with all of your responses and for making yourselves available here today. We really appreciate it. A big hand for our panel, everyone. Thank you. We'll do the David Letterman. Thanks for coming on the show. No, thanks. Thank you.